very much. So yeah, I'm a storyteller. So I say it like that because every time I tell someone what I do, they say, "Right, but what do you do?" And I say, I tell stories. Now in Ireland, you'd think you'd get away with it, that people would know. But I was at a storytelling festival down on Cape Clear Island, and I was standing around because everyone stands around and chats in between telling stories. And this elder gentleman said to me, "So, what is it you do?" And I said, I'm a storyteller. And he went, "Yeah, no, what do you do like for a living?" And I said, "I'm a storyteller." And he said, "Is that wise?" And it was one of those moments, when an elder gives you a piece of wisdom and you're thinking, is it wise? I'm not sure. So that's been my job since. And since 2006. And every year I find out something else that makes me feel like a complete beginner. So we human beings have been telling stories for 100,000 years, according to the evolutionary biologists. 100,000 years. It's way longer than writing. Yeah. So we've only been writing 10,000 years, give or take. But really, mass literacy, you're looking at about 500 years, right? 100,000 years is enough time that your brain, by the time this generation was born, your brain has pathways in it built, waiting to hear your first story. So we made this. This is an ancient technology that we designed. Our ancestors designed it. And they built it so that when they learned something or found something or discovered something the hard way, they could then package it up in this perfect, absolutely free technology. And all you require is a body, a way to hear it and a way to say it, and then you carry it. And that story will live on in you, be it a myth or a folk tale or a family tale, all of it. We just heard one that none of us will forget. And it will live inside of you. You become, and you've been this since you were tiny, but you become a walking library of stories. And the question is, and this ties to legacy, but the question is, what are you carrying? Is it good for you? And what are you going to leave behind when you go? So as a professional storyteller, obviously I have stories about my life and all of that, but I actually carry a big bag of medicine, like a big bag. I think of stories as medicine, right? Good medicine and bad medicine. And so I carry a big bag of stories, and I then have to choose which one for which occasion. So I've got one for you that's been walking with me for a while. You all know Fionn McCool and the Fianna? Yeah? Pretty much everyone in the room. I don't think I need to explain that, yeah? So I was raised like you were on the Fionn McCool stories and the battles and the weapons and the mad things. I never knew this one though. Once, the lads had been out hunting all day, and they'd been hunting deer, and they'd managed to kill a couple. And then they found a place where they would camp for the night, So one of them started getting the pick going and the stones and the fire. And another one started skinning the deer and cutting away the flesh. And the others started cleaning the blood off the weapons and getting everything right. And one by one, they started to gather around the great fire. And the meat was put on the hot stones, and the smell of that venison in the air. And as the Fianna warriors started to lean back, and the sky started to get dark, Cuilche McRonan, Cuilche, the fleet-footed, the fastest of all the Fianna, he started singing. Everyone got real quiet. And on the other side of the fire, Oisin, the dark-haired poet of the Fianna, he looked over and he said, "Where'd you learn that old song?" I learned it from the bird in the field where we caught the deer. "All right," says Oisin. "Would you say that's the most beautiful music in all the world?" Cuilche started laughing. He said, my voice, most beautiful music. No, no. And so Oisin, being a good poet, he had good questions. So he said, go on then. What is it? And you know how it is. When a poet asks a question like that, everyone sat back. And one of the warriors said, the most beautiful music in all the world. It's the sound of the rain as it hits the earth. Good answer. And one of the other warriors, Gall MacMorna, Gall with all the scars. He had more scars than he had hair on his head. He said, no, because he only had the one eye. He said, no, the most beautiful music in all the world is the clash of metal when we go to battle and there's blood in the air. And they all said, yeah, you would say that, Gall, you would say that. And another one, Dermot O'Divney said, the most beautiful music in all the world is the sound of a woman when she's at the height of her passion. And they said, well, you would say that. You have a lot of experience. And they all started to shout out their answers. The most beautiful music in all the world is the sound of the stag at the top of the mountain as he bellows over his dominion. The most beautiful music is the slap of the salmon as she hits the water on her way back in. Sound after sound after sound after sound. They called out as the stars wheeled overhead, as the men sat back on the earth. Finally, Oisin looked around, and everyone had answered, except for one. John McCool, he said, Captain, Da, what do you say? They're all good answers, these. They're all good answers. But I'd say the most beautiful music in all the world is the music of what happens. That's that story. Had you heard that one? Me neither. It's about this big. And it's wedged at the end of a long war story where lots of vengeance and revenge and blood happens. That story is about 1,000 years old, we think, roughly. So what is the legacy of that story? What does that story carry? What does it leave you with? You don't have to answer it now because myth takes a bit of time. Sometimes you need to sit with it. But I wonder about this a lot. So I've been apprenticed to story for 18 years. And that's what it feels like. So I'm self-taught maybe, but actually I've been learning from story. And story teaches me to think mythologically. To think really, do you ever hear that people say, the Chinese are really good at thinking in epochs? You ever heard anyone say that? Or long-term thinking, the Chinese are good at long-term thinking, right? We used to be good at long-term thinking, my friends. We, on this island. Now, we kind of succumbed to short-termism a little bit, but, it wasn't all our fault. There were some people that came. The Vikings tried. They didn't really get a strong enough foothold. But then we had the old English, the colonizing occupation, and then we had the church, right? And there's a lot of short-termism in their thinking, and that has become the way that we think. Short-term gains. My legacy becomes just the kid in front of me, or how much money I've got in the bank. The government thinks in terms of 5-year epochs, right? Well, here's the thing. We know how to do this. I think that we know how to think mythologically. I think we need to remember how to think mythologically. And when I say think mythologically, I mean, we built Newgrange 5,200 years ago. You've all seen it, right? There's no judgment. If you haven't been there, it's all right. Someone here will take you tomorrow. But when you look at Newgrange, that's the art of thinking like a stone and thinking like a planet. Because they left their wisdom carved in the stones, and the stones set in certain places that they knew would be left as messages for us. And it's still aligned. This blows my mind, right? So they were able to think 5,000 years into the future. They weren't able to predict how bad the weather was going to be now. with the lack of sunlight on the solstice, but still that sun, when there is sun, shines down that shaft. So our ancestors know how to think like a stone, and they know how to think like a planet. We had druids who wrote with tree script. So we know how to think like a tree. And I think now this is what we need. This, like legacy, do you know, legacy that's right in front of you, like, and right behind you, I'm not that interested in. I'm interested in legacy. How do we make legacy that's going to stretch out 10,000 years? And I think it's possible. We just can't think like a capitalist because that's about excessive growth. And that's the philosophy of a cancer cell, right? Growth for growth's sake. So we can think like a tree though, because our ancestors did, and they left us loads of signs for that. I've gotten very excited, so I haven't looked at my notes once. What else was I going to say? Right. So, yeah, and the thing is, if it's in your ancestry, you can just tap into it. It's already there. You're already hardwired for story. That's your inheritance. But we're also hardwired for mythological thinking. I'm telling you, it's a huge relief. Because the impending disaster, there's always a bigger perspective. Another thought I want to plant in your brains is storytelling is an ancient technology and it's yours. You've had it your whole lives and you'll have it till the day you die, right? There's new technology that's happened in the last, since 1989, and we've been in that, right? The incredible, paradoxical internet, right? And it's great. It's bringing loads of amazing gifts, sharing of knowledge, great sharing of knowledge around the world. However, it's also done something very strange to our relationship to information, in that we're in a deluge of information. And we are receiving more information now than our ancestors ever did in their entire lives in the space of probably, I would say, even a year. And our psyches aren't built for this. Our psyches are not machines. I'm saying that because the amount of what are being called stories that we're being exposed to that are quite toxic, that we're imbibing every day, right? You're a storytelling animal. Be careful what you put in there. This is the only thing you get, is what's in there. There's John O'Donoghue, right? You read him? Yeah. So the inner space, that inner landscape. What if you haven't got Walking on the Pastures of Wonder? That's the John O'Donoghue where he's in conversation, and we are oral people. Go to where people are speaking, and you'll hear the essence of them, and that's him at his best, I think, right? But that inner landscape is being polluted by this constant deluge, like a huge hose of what they're calling stories. So I'd like you to just be really, really careful with that. And I'll probably say more about the kind of neuroscience behind that tomorrow. Because the thing is, every year I work with story, every year I find out more that it can do that blows my mind. So I'll give you an example. I'm in California. I'm at a storytelling festival. And at all storytelling festivals, they say, would you teach a workshop? And I go, yeah, how long do I have? And they say 2 hours to teach people everything you know about storytelling. I'm like, great, thanks. So 2 hours is a glimpse, right? So I get people into this room. It's a random group of people, younger people, older people, people have come together, people have come on their own. And I lead them through some exercises. I give them a story, I get them to work with it. Then some of you have been in workshops with me, right? So I say, now I'm going to break you up. You've been sitting together. You two are going to work separately. And so I break everybody up. And this woman says, no, I'm going to work with my husband. We don't want to be parted. I said, Grant, everyone's got a reason. I'm not going to ask. So we leave those in. So every exercise they do together. We do all the exercise. I'm asked, what did you think of that story? How did you find retelling that story? It's going nice. It's a nice feeling because when you were listening to the story of the Fianna Warriors, did you notice something happening in your brain? Did you notice your body relax at all? Did you see any images? Right, because your brain goes, ooh, story, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. There you go, feeling good. Yeah, you start to feel all these things. So the storytelling workshops are great because you're basically a drug dealer. And I'm just giving people, their own brain feeds them drugs, right? So I'm enjoying that. Everyone's smiling and happy. And we get to the end of the workshop and everyone's like, thanks so much. I'm like, thank you. That was great. That's great. I'll see you later at the festival. And this woman is hanging back. And you always know when someone needs to say something, don't you? So I just wait and wait and finally everyone's gone and she's, thank you so much. I was like, that's a very big thank you. Do you know, it was a storytelling workshop. I didn't say that, but I was thinking that. It's very effusive, thank you. And I said, oh, you're grand, don't worry. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And she went, no, did you see my husband? I was like, yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, I made sure we were paired together and everything. She said, yeah. Do you know he has Alzheimer's? I said, what? She said, I haven't had a conversation with my husband for over a year. There was no moment during that workshop that was any indication that that man had any signs of Alzheimer's. I was asking him questions, he was answering them. He was retelling stories. No part of my brain, and I've been around people all the time. So she just welled up and we grabbed each other's hands and I said, well, will you be telling him more stories? She said, I will. And she walked out. So when I look at what we're up against, I think of storytelling as a superpower. And in terms of what we do going forward, how we build legacy. Legacy is, this concept of whakapapa from New Zealand, or 7-generation thinking from Turtle Island, from North America, right? So whakapapa is the idea that you are standing in the sunshine of your life. There are 3 generations behind you. There are 3 generations in front of you. You get your moment in the sunshine. We are always aware of the line that you are in. And so that's the kind of mythological thinking that I'd like us to have. So because storytelling is the cheapest form of time and space travel, I have no idea how long I've been talking for. But what I do know is that when I was listening to Camille's beautiful story, a story popped into my head. And I have learned over 18 years never to ignore a story that pops into my head. So I wasn't going to tell this one, but I will close with a story, and then I'll see what happens next. Once there was an old man. I mean, he was just bent over with age. He was so old. He had outlived his first wife, his second wife, his third wife. He had watched his children grow up, his grandchildren grow up. He had great-grandchildren. He had mastered one trade and then another and then another. You get the idea. He was so old that when he got up, everything hurt. His bones hurt, yeah. But even the little bit of hair on his head hurt. So when he woke up that day, he just said, enough. I want to die. And he felt good about that. Because it was like a decision. It felt like a good decision. So he brought himself out onto the little front porch in front of his house to wait for death. But death did not come. All day he waited for death. No death. So he had to get up, go back inside, very disappointed. Crawled into bed that night, pulled up the old blanket, and he said, tomorrow I will die. So the next day, he made his way out to the porch and he sat down to wait for death. And death did not come. Nor the next, not a week, not a month. 6 weeks waiting for death. He didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't die. That was it. It was too much for him. So, start of the 7th week. If death would not come for him, he would go and he would find death. He got a stick. He started walking. He was quite old. That was his top speed. So he walked and he walked and he walked out into the hot desert, out into the long landscape, out, and not bringing any food or water. He thought surely he would die. Week after week after week after week. Until finally, he saw this tall man with a shadow that stretched to the edge of the horizon. So strange and thin and tall, he thought, that's probably dead. I got excited. So he sped up. And when he got close, he could see that a tall man had a rope. And the rope led to a creature that was sort of half dog, half something else, just sort of all black and spiky and that sort of thing. And he said, excuse me, are you death? And the tall man said, no. I am time. She is death. Oh, you're death. hello, oh, I'm looking for you everywhere. How are you? And the creature just turned away. And he looked up and the tall man said, it's not you. Nothing you've done. It's just she's off her food. I said, what? He said, yeah, you know, she gets two kinds of people to eat. She gets old people like you, skinny, ready to die. You don't fight with her and you taste awful. And then there's the young people who are plump and juicy and they're not ready to die and they fight with her and she loves that. But she hasn't had any young people lately, so she's off her food. And the old man was determined to die, so he just said, excuse me, Madam Death, what, do you need anything? Anything at all? And she turned and she said, I am thirsty. There was a spring, I will get you water. She said, no, not for water, for stories. Do you know any? You know how it is when someone says, you know, a story, you just go blank. And he did, he just went completely. And she started to turn, she started to walk away. And she was pulling the man time with her. He said, no, wait. I was born in a village far from here. I had 7 older brothers. My oldest brother was the worst. She stopped, she turned. And he told story after story of his brothers. And then story after story of falling in love, of mastering a trade, of all of his big adventures in life. And she listened and listened and listened and sat until he spoke hour after hour after hour until his tongue dried up. The last word fell like a stone. And time said, she likes you. I think she will eat you. But not today, huh? Go home. She'll come for you tomorrow. And time just touched him on the shoulder. And with the push of time's hand against his shoulder, it had taken him 7 weeks to walk to that place. It took him 7 seconds and he was back at his front door. And he was about to die. He went to bed. The last night in bed. Blanket up to his chin. And as he lay there, in the middle of the night, he was thinking of all the stories he told about his life. About his wives and his kids and his work. And suddenly he felt nostalgia. Suddenly he didn't want to die. He wanted to live. But he made a promise. When you make a promise, you keep it. So filled with that lust for life, he went out onto the porch. And as the sun came up, he could hear her before he saw her. And he turned and there she was, coming up the little dirt track with the rope dragging in the dirt behind her. And as she stepped up onto the porch, she said, where is time? She said, I ate him. You tell better stories. And she picked up the rope and she put it in his hand. And they stepped off the porch together. And they've been walking the world together ever since. Love you.